my theory, or at least my logic tells me that if Vladimir Putin can control the gas prices, then certainly Joe Biden should have a hand in it too, right? These are world leaders that we're trying to blame. Am I wrong in thinking that this war on Ukraine is just blown way out of proportion in terms of how it's affecting not only inflation, but I'm spending a lot of money at the fuel pump.
Right. So, I mean, the war definitely factors in.
Sure.
I would say it's about half.
Okay.
Because if you look, I mean, historically, you only need to look back a year, and you can see that we had massive inflation before the war ever started, before
Right.
Putin ever began lining up his people at the border. So there's a lot more going on. And it's as simple as the president doesn't set the oil prices, that's for sure. And we saw the G7, they're talking about, let's put a cap on oil prices, which is laughable. And it proves that there's no one there who understands oil and gas pricing. I mean, OPEC is the cartel that controls by far like 90% of the world's reserves and 50% of our supply at any given moment. And then OPEC Plus, which includes Russia, which is one of the top 3 producers, has a lot more say. They will decide what the price is. And then secondarily, the U.S., being one of the top 3, produces according to the market. We're the only country where the government doesn't decide how much we produce. Private sector decides. It is privately owned by millions of Americans and pension funds, or, we all have royalties if you're in the market probably. So Joe Biden doesn't tell U.S. oil and gas what they'll charge, but what he does do is put as much weight or drag on the line for American producers who, when we're the top producer, that really has an impact on the world's supply, and supply and demand makes the price.
So much. First of all, I hear people say, well, again, the thing that gets my goat is this first thing he did was he shut down the pipelines, made it where refineries couldn't work or they're not working. And it's not just, we can't just say, oh, well, just turn the spigot on. You can't do that because you got to rebuild. I mean, these pumps, they go bad. They decay. I mean, you can't just shut them down and just turn them right back on. It takes about 6 to 9 months to get that process going again. And we're sitting here, the American people are suffering. But we see this problem where people go, oh, well, if we had the pipeline, they were just taking that from Canada down to, the Gulf of Mexico, and they were shipping it to other places. Well, it stands to reason, if we benefit so much because of Russia's exports of oil, shouldn't we also benefit from our own exports of oil?
Yes.
As well? Am I thinking right on that?
You are. It's a world marketplace. And so every barrel that goes on to the world market, wherever it comes from, as long as it gets moved, and it can only get moved with pipelines. Or secondarily, you can take Warren Buffett's train, which has about 8 times the carbon footprint of a pipeline. Or you can take trucks, which has many more times the carbon footprint of the train. Yeah. So pipelines are the greenest, simplest, safest way to move the resource. And yes, the more that goes online, the lower the price everywhere.
We're getting screwed. Yeah. I mean, we know that. And everybody wants to blame somebody. I know, again, I love to pick on Biden because he's the buck stops here guy, right? And you talk about these 87 things that are there. And what happened? Why is it so bad to be America first? I mean, why does that become just, if you say that, well, you must be one of those crazy white right-wing red hat wearing insurrectionists.
So I think it's because the upper crust, the absolute top upper crust of America, the business class, really makes its money overseas or through trade. So the labor is cheaper somewhere else. Maybe in the past, the energy was cheaper somewhere else. That's no longer true. We're reshoring some jobs actually during the Trump administration. But the point is that for them, they might have their mines somewhere else. Maybe you can only mine certain things and raw materials somewhere else, such as the rare earth elements that you need to make wind and solar. They come out of places like the Congo, and only slave laborers produce it. And the Chinese control the supply chain. Well, if people are making money on that, they don't want anything getting in the way of that very narrow supply. So there are problems like this. And so basically, if you're getting in the way of their profiteering, whatever the side effects might be, such as having a supply chain you can't rely on in an emergency, they don't want to hear that.